She only had 16 years behind her, and that small motel room was the only place that didn't ask why. It smelled like old cigarette smoke and lemon cleaner. The air was heavy with stories of people passing through, all of them carrying something they couldn't leave behind. She dropped her backpack by the edge of the bed, the weight of it nothing compared to the weight in her chest. Her name was Laney, 16, pregnant, alone. Outside, the rain beat soft against the window, a rhythm she'd learned to live by. She'd walked 2 miles from the bus station, each step echoing a choice she never thought she'd have to make so young. No one had called after her. No one had come looking, not after her mother slammed the front door and said, "You're not my problem anymore." Not after her boyfriend vanished like steam after saying he wasn't ready to be a father. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands cradling her swollen belly. The baby kicked. Not hard, just a little reminder. "I'm here, Mama." Laney didn't cry. Not then. Her tears had dried out somewhere along the last goodbye. But something in that motel room, something in the stillness, let her breathe for the first time in days. The woman at the front desk had given her the key with a glance, said nothing about the age, or the belly, or the lost look in her eyes. That silence felt like mercy. She peeled off her soaked jacket, tried to dry her feet with one of the rough towels, and wrapped herself in the comforter. It smelled like 100 stories, but it was warm. That was enough. She didn't sleep that night. The baby moved too much. Her back ached, and the motel walls were thin. Sometime past midnight, she heard a voice through the wall. A man, deep, measured, talking low, like he didn't want anyone to hear. "No, I don't need anything. Just don't call me again." Then silence. Just like her. He was alone. That was all she could gather. Laney didn't know it yet. But the man in the next room had a name etched on buildings, a face that once graced magazines, and a bank account that could feed 1,000 babies. But what he didn't have was someone to hold his hand when the storms came. For now, he was just another lonely guest, just a man behind a wall. And Laney, a mother before she was ready, holding on to the only thing she had left. If you've ever felt the world give up on someone too soon, then sit here with me, sweetheart. This story's about lost babies, found hearts, and a second cradle. The rain didn't stop the next day. It softened, sure, but it didn't let go. Laney sat on the motel bed, her legs pulled under her, spooning oatmeal from a plastic cup she'd heated in the lobby microwave. It was bland, but it was warm. She ate for the baby. Every bite was a promise. "I won't give up." Her stomach twisted with more than just hunger. The baby was getting closer. She felt it in her ribs, in the tightness of her lower back. She counted the days on the motel notepad. 9 weeks early. She'd never meant to stay long. Just a night or two, until she figured out what came next. But she kept staying, because the world outside that motel door still felt too loud, too cruel. She took small jobs where she could, cleaned a few rooms, ran towels to guests. The manager, Miss Val, a hard-edged woman with kind eyes, never asked much. Laney was grateful for that. But then came the night that changed everything. It was around 3 a.m. The room was dark except for the soft yellow light from the bathroom she kept on for comfort. That's when it happened. A sharp cry. Not the baby yet. Her. Laney doubled over, breath caught in her throat, pain radiating through her hips like fire. She gripped the nightstand, trying not to scream. She didn't want anyone to hear. Didn't want to be kicked out. Didn't want the shame. But pain has its own voice. She sobbed into her hands, the kind of sound that doesn't ask for help, but begs for it all the same. Through the wall, the man stirred. He'd been awake anyway, sitting at the little table with a glass of bourbon he hadn't touched, just watching the rain drip down the window. When he heard it, her cry, it wasn't just noise, it was a memory. A cry like that had once come from someone he failed to save. He stood slowly, walked to the thin wall, pressed his hand against it like he could feel her through the plaster. Then he knocked. Not loud, just once. Laney froze. Another knock. She pulled herself up, dizzy and shaking. "Who is it?" she called, her voice barely more than a whisper. From the other side came a pause, then a voice. "Just a neighbor. You okay in there?" Silence. She didn't answer. "I can call someone," he added quieter now, "if you need." Laney bit her lip so hard it bled. The baby shifted. She felt something strange, a pressure, low and urgent. "No," she said. "I'm fine." But they both knew she wasn't. The man stood there another moment, unsure why he even cared. He wasn't the kind of man who got involved. Not anymore. Not since her. He went back to his chair, but he didn't sit. Laney curled into the blankets again, heart pounding. She didn't want to trust anyone. Not now. But something about his voice. It didn't ask anything of her. And that night, as she drifted into a painful, restless sleep, she whispered one word. "Help." She didn't know if he heard. But in the room next door, the man didn't sleep either. And when dawn came, Laney's water broke. The morning came gray, like the sky hadn't made up its mind. But Laney's world was already breaking open. She stood in the middle of the motel bathroom, shaking. The tiles were cold under her bare feet, and the edges of her vision swam. She clung to the sink as warm fluid soaked through her pajama pants. Her water had broken, 9 weeks early. Her breath came in short, ragged gasps, the way it did when you're trying not to be afraid, but your body already knows what's coming. She stared at herself in the mirror, pale, tired, 16. There was no one to call, no mother, no boyfriend, no safety net, only the man next door. But she didn't even know his name. Laney stumbled back into the room, fumbling for her backpack. Somewhere inside was the emergency $20 bill she'd folded 100 times, but her hands shook too hard. Another contraction hit. She cried out, loud this time, and that was all it took. There was a knock, not on the wall this time, on the door. "Laney?" The man's voice called, deeper now, firmer. "Open the door." She froze. He knew her name. How do you know my—" "Val told me," he said. "She said you might need help. She's calling an ambulance." "No," Laney staggered. I can't go to a hospital. I can't." She didn't have insurance, didn't know what they'd do, didn't know if they'd take the baby from her. "Please," her voice cracked. "I just need— I don't know." The doorknob turned, but it was locked. "Laney," he said again. "My name is Ellis. I'm not here to hurt you. I heard you last night. And again now. And He paused. You could hear the ache in his throat. "I know what it's like to be too late." That silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of ghosts. Laney stepped forward, trembling. She unlocked the door. It opened slow, and there he stood, older, maybe late 50s, dressed too clean for this place, in a crisp white shirt and dark jeans. His eyes were tired, the kind that had seen both boardrooms and burial grounds. Ellis looked at her like she was real, not a problem, not a mistake, just real. He took one glance at her soaked clothes and pale face. His voice gentled. "We need to get you to a doctor." "I'm not leaving without the baby," she said. He didn't flinch. "Then let's go get this baby safely, yeah?" She nodded barely. He grabbed her backpack, gently draped his coat over her shoulders, and led her out into the rain. Miss Val was waiting by her little red sedan, already cursing under her breath. "Ambulance is delayed. You take her, Ellis. You know the roads better than anyone." Laney didn't have time to wonder how these two people, who barely knew her, were suddenly her lifeline. Ellis helped her into the passenger seat, then turned back to Val. "Which hospital?" Val's answer came soft. "Take her to Mercy Ridge, same one your wife went to." Something flickered in his eyes. A memory. He didn't say anything. Just got in the car, started the engine, and they drove. The motel disappeared behind them in the rearview mirror. But the pain didn't. Laney gripped the door handle as another contraction rolled through her. "Ellis," she gasped. "I don't think I can do this." He kept his eyes on the road. But his hand found hers, strong, steady. "You already are." And as they passed mile marker 14, the rain softened to a mist. But what waited at the hospital wasn't just a birth. It was a reckoning from Ellis's past. Mercy Ridge sat quiet on the hill like it was holding its breath. The building was small, one of those county hospitals that had seen too much and still stood proud, the kind with nurses who'd been there for 30 years and pictures of retired doctors hanging in the hallways. Laney gripped Ellis's arm as they hurried through the sliding doors. Every step was a storm. Her body wasn't ready. Her mind wasn't either. But babies don't wait for perfect. The nurse at the front desk looked up, startled by the soaked man and shaking girl. "How far along?" 7 months. Laney whispered. The nurse's face changed. She called a name over her shoulder, and within seconds, a wheelchair arrived. A warm blanket, firm hands, questions asked, but gently this time. Ellis stood back, watching her disappear into the maternity wing. He hadn't been here in years. Not since. His feet moved on their own, carrying him down a hallway he'd memorized in another life, past the old chapel room with the dusty stained glass, past the vending machine that still had the same faded stickers. Room 208. That had been hers. He stopped in front of it. Charlotte, his wife. She'd died quietly. Complications. No baby survived. They'd tried so long, lost so much. And when it was all over, Ellis hadn't come back. Not once. Until today. Back in maternity, Laney lay on the bed, eyes wide, machines beeping. A nurse explained that they'd tried to delay labor. Shots. IVs. But they might not succeed. Laney turned her face to the wall. She'd never felt more alone. But then, footsteps. Soft. Measured. Ellis appeared in the doorway, holding something wrapped in tissue. "A nurse told me you didn't bring any clothes for the baby," he said. Laney nodded, embarrassed. He handed her a tiny pink onesie. Still folded. Still new. "My wife bought this," he said. "A long time ago. We never got to use it." Laney touched the soft fabric with trembling fingers. "I can't take this." "You're not taking," he said gently. "You're giving it purpose." She pressed it to her chest and cried, the way only a girl without a mother could cry, and Ellis sat down in the chair beside her, silent, steady. Outside, the rain had stopped, but inside, the doctor entered, with a face too serious. "We need to talk," he said. And just like that, the air in the room changed. The doctor closed the door behind him with a soft click, but it sounded louder than thunder in Laney's ears. He looked to Ellis first, then back to her. "Laney," he began gently, "your baby's coming early, and that means a few things we need to be honest about." Laney nodded, her fingers curling around the edge of the blanket. "The lungs aren't fully developed yet," he continued. "We're doing everything we can. Steroid shots, magnesium. But if the baby decides to come now, we'll need to transfer you to a better equipped hospital." Her heart pounded. No, I can't leave. I don't have anyone. I don't have money. I don't even..." She started to cry, hot and shaking, her fear louder than any contraction. Ellis stepped forward, quiet but steady. "She's not alone," he said. The doctor glanced between them, unsure. "Are you family?" There was a pause, and then Ellis said, "No, but I'm here." That was all. The doctor gave a slow nod. "I'll make the call, but it'll take an hour or so for the transport. In the meantime, we monitor, try to keep labor from progressing." He left. The room fell into a hush, broken only by the soft whir of machines and Laney's breath, shallow and uncertain. She turned her head toward Ellis. "You don't have to stay." "I know." "Then why are you?" Ellis looked at her with eyes that had seen too much grief, and still chose to stay. "Because someone should have stayed for my wife," he said, "and someone should stay for you." Laney didn't have words, just tears. She hadn't cried like this since the day her mother slammed the door. That day she told herself she'd never need anyone again. But needing wasn't weakness. It was human. She wiped her eyes, trying to gather herself. "Do you have kids?" He shook his head. "We tried. Lost 3 pregnancies. Charlotte, she never got to hold a baby that lived." Laney swallowed hard. "Is that why you brought the onesie?" He nodded. "She bought it after the second one. Said maybe hope was still worth the pain." A silence fell between them. Not empty, full. Then Ellis did something strange. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small leather notebook. "This was hers," he said. "She used to write letters to the baby, even before it existed." He placed it on the table beside her. "You don't have to read them now, but I think you should have it." Laney touched the worn leather, trembling. But before she could say anything, her body seized again. Another contraction. Stronger. Longer. She cried out, and nurses rushed in. "It's too soon," one of them said. "We're losing time." Ellis stepped back, watching her grip the rails of the bed. The machines beeped faster, and the nurse whispered, barely audible, "We might not make it to the transfer." The delivery room wasn't what Laney pictured. There were no flowers, no family waiting in chairs, no one pacing the hallway, nervous and excited. Just white lights, masked nurses, and the sound of her own breathing. Tight, uneven, afraid. They hadn't made it to the city hospital. The baby was coming now. The doctor was back, gloves on, voice calm. "Laney, you need to push when I say. We'll be right here." Laney gripped the sides of the bed, her hair damp with sweat. Her body felt like it was being split in two. But worse than the pain was the fear. "What if she doesn't breathe?" she whispered. Ellis stood near the door, helpless. The nurse beside her smiled gently. "Then we breathe for her, honey. But you have to be strong. You're her breath right now." Laney nodded, but tears spilled from her eyes. She'd never been strong enough. That's what everyone had always said. Too soft, too dreamy, too naive. And now here she was, 16, giving birth to a baby she hadn't even chosen, but who had become her whole reason to keep going. The doctor's voice broke through the fog. "Okay, Laney, now push," she screamed, pushed, again. The minutes stretched into eternity. Then, a cry, small, thin, but real. Laney collapsed into the mattress, sobbing. But the cry didn't last long. There was a flurry of movement. The baby was rushed to a warming table, tiny chest rising and falling too fast. The nurses murmured to each other. Words like oxygen and incubator floated through the air. Laney turned her head. "Is she okay?" No one answered right away. Then Ellis stepped forward, slowly, carefully. The nurse glanced at him, uncertain. "She needs a guardian signature for the NICU," she said. Are you? Ellis looked at Laney. She nodded. His hand shook slightly as he took the pen. "Name, Ellis Grant. Relationship, temporary guardian." The nurse rushed out with the form, baby in tow. Laney sobbed, her body shaking. "I didn't even get to hold her." "You will," Ellis said. "You don't know that?" He sat beside her, held her hand. "She's strong," he whispered. "She cried. That means she's fighting." Laney looked at him. "You stayed." He smiled. "Tired, warm. Of course I did." Outside the hospital window, the first sunlight in days broke through the clouds. And down the hall, inside the NICU, a nurse opened the little leather notebook Ellis had forgotten on the table. Inside was a letter, one that wasn't written by his wife, but by someone else. The NICU was hushed like a church at dawn. Tiny machines blinked like distant stars. The room was lined with incubators, each one holding a fragile life, tethered to hope by wires and will. Laney's baby lay swaddled in soft blankets, her chest fluttering like the wing of a bird learning to fly. The nurse beside her was young, maybe in her 20s, gentle in the way you only become when you've seen both miracles and grief. She checked vitals, adjusted the oxygen. Then her eyes caught on something tucked beneath the blanket on the parents' bench, a small leather notebook, worn, familiar. She picked it up carefully, flipped it open, expecting to find the usual, hopes, prayers, names they might choose. But what she found was a letter, written in handwriting that didn't match the rest. Different ink, different tone. She read the date first. It was written 3 months ago. But Ellis's wife, Charlotte, had been gone for 5 years. The nurse frowned. Her eyes moved quickly, then stopped. A name jumped off the page. "Ellis," it began. "I know you still carry her. I know the room stayed ready, even after all these years. But love doesn't die with the body. It just waits. If you ever find yourself face to face with someone else's child, someone not yours, but somehow meant for you, don't walk away again. Stay. We never got to be parents. But maybe," she stopped reading. Laney appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a hospital robe, eyes red but brighter than before. "Can I see her?" The nurse nodded quickly, slipping the notebook into her coat pocket. "Of course." Laney approached slowly. Her knees wobbled. Her arms ached to hold what her body had made. The baby looked so small, so impossibly alive. "She doesn't have a name yet," Laney whispered. "I was supposed to have more time." The nurse smiled gently. "Time's strange in here. Minutes can feel like years, or like the whole world stops for a heartbeat." Laney looked down at her daughter, tears rolling silently. "Do you want to hold her?" Laney gasped. "Can I? She's stable now. Go slow." The nurse helped her into the chair, positioned the wires, placed the baby in her arms. Laney had never held anything that small, that perfect, that hers. And as she looked into that little face, she whispered, Hope, that's your name. But at that very moment down the hallway, Ellis was sitting in the hospital cafeteria, staring at an old photo of his wife, and a man he hadn't seen in decades sat down across from him, uninvited. "Didn't expect to find you here, Grant," the man said. Ellis looked up slowly. It was the lawyer who'd handled Charlotte's estate. "Why now?" the man asked. "Why this girl? Why this baby?" And in his hand was a sealed envelope with Ellis's name on it. Ellis stared at the envelope like it was a ghost come calling. The lawyer placed it on the table, slid it forward without ceremony. "I was instructed to give this to you," he said, "but only if certain conditions were met." "What conditions?" "She said you'd know when the time came." Ellis frowned. "Charlotte wrote this?" The lawyer nodded. 3 weeks before she died. She left it sealed. I was told to wait until you did something she believed you never would." "And what was that?" The man gave a slow, meaningful look. "Care again." Ellis didn't move for a long time. The hum of vending machines, nurses calling out codes in the distance, all of it faded. He picked up the envelope. It was hand-addressed, that same looping script he could still see in his dreams. There was a small pressed flower inside the fold, dried lavender, Charlotte's favorite. He opened it. The letter was short. "Ellis, if you're reading this, then somehow you've stopped running. And I'm proud of you. You always said the world had enough pain, and one more broken child wasn't your cross to carry. But love, it was never about carrying the weight alone. It was about sharing the load. Maybe she's a girl. Maybe she's scared. Maybe she's the age we were when we met. Maybe she reminds you of someone. If you're holding this letter, I know you found her. You were always meant to be someone's second chance." Tears filled Ellis's eyes. He folded the letter, slow and reverent. He didn't say anything to the lawyer, just stood and walked out. Back in the NICU, Laney sat with Hope asleep on her chest, skin to skin. The moment felt too sacred to speak aloud. She hadn't had many things in life she could call hers, but this child, this was something else. She didn't hear Ellis approach. He stood in the doorway, quietly watching. "You named her," he said softly. Laney turned, startled. "Hope," he nodded, lips pressed tight. "It suits her." They sat in silence for a moment. No need to fill it. Then Laney whispered, "Thank you for staying." "You don't have to thank me." "I do," she said. "Because people like you don't usually look twice at people like me." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm a teenage mother. I live in a motel. My mom kicked me out. My baby came early. I'm nobody." Ellis's face changed. He stepped closer. "You're not nobody. You're the bravest person I've met in years." Laney looked away, embarrassed by kindness she didn't know how to hold. Then Ellis reached into his coat and pulled out the letter. "I think this belongs to both of us now," he said. Laney read it. Her hands trembled. Her breath caught. She knew, before either of us did. And outside the window, rain began to fall again. Gentle this time. But down the hall, Miss Val entered the hospital lobby with something in her hand. A folded birth certificate form. And on the bottom line, there was a space for the father's name. Laney sat in the quiet of her hospital room, baby Hope asleep in her arms, her chest rising and falling like a lullaby only a mother could hear. Beside her, the nurse had left a clipboard with the discharge paperwork. A simple form. Just lines and boxes. Baby's name, Hope Grace McAllen. Mother's name, Laney Ruth McAllen. And below that, father's name. The pen hovered above the empty space. Laney's lips pressed together. She could have left it blank. It would have been easier. No questions. No confusion. Just a quiet omission, like most girls in her place would have done. But the ache in her chest wasn't just from the birth. It was from all the goodbyes that had come too early. Her own father had vanished before she could remember him. Her mother had made sure she remembered the leaving, the silence, the lack of help. She didn't want her daughter to feel that same emptiness. But Ellis wasn't the father. He was something else, something strange and steady. A man who had knocked gently instead of barging in, who had sat with her through pain, not trying to fix it, just being there. Still, she couldn't write his name. Not yet. So she did the only thing she knew how. She folded the form, tucked it back under the clipboard, and kissed her baby's forehead. "I'll figure it out," she whispered. One day, the door opened quietly, and there he was, Ellis, holding 2 cups of tea. "I didn't know if you liked peppermint or chamomile," he said. She blinked. "You brought tea?" "I'm told it's the appropriate gesture for tired mothers." She smiled, just a little. The kind that happens when someone sees you in the small ways. He sat down, careful not to disturb the baby. "Hope's stronger than I expected," he said. "She's a fighter." "You too." Laney looked at him. "I'm scared." He didn't flinch. "Me too." She studied his face, the kindness etched deep, like lines drawn by time and regret. "Can I ask you something?" she whispered. "Of course. If you had become a father, what kind would you have been?" Ellis took a long breath. The kind who stayed, even when he didn't have the answers. She nodded slowly, then looked away, and that's when she said it. So quiet, she wasn't sure she meant to. "She doesn't have anyone else." Ellis didn't respond, just sipped his tea. But that night, when Laney finally fell asleep with Hope curled against her chest, Ellis sat by the window, and in the soft light of the hospital lamp, he picked up the birth certificate form, stared at that blank space, and began to write. But before he could finish, his phone buzzed. A name on the screen he hadn't seen in years. Rita, Charlotte's sister. He answered. The voice on the other end was trembling. "Ellis, it's about the motel. I think you need to know something." Back at the motel, the sky was darker than usual, clouds low and pressing, the kind of night where secrets crept in like fog. Rita met Ellis outside room 6, her coat pulled tight, hair grayer than he remembered. She held a folder in one hand, old yellowed papers clipped together. Her eyes were wide, worried. "I didn't know who else to call," she said. Ellis looked at the room number. "Laney's," she nodded. "I came to check on something. The manager let me see the records." She opened the folder and handed him a page. "This room. It's not just any room, Ellis. It's the same one Charlotte stayed in the night before she went into labor." He froze. "What?" Rita nodded. I recognized the handwriting. She checked in alone, said she needed space. "You were away at that conference, remember?" He remembered. Too well. "I thought it was just a coincidence," Rita whispered. "Until I saw this." She handed him a photo. It was blurry, from an old motel camera. A girl, young, thin, dark hair, stepping out of a cab. But in her arms was a baby, not Charlotte. Another girl, another night, another birth. Ellis stared at it. "That's not Charlotte." "No," Rita said softly. "It's a teenager. And the date is 2 months after Charlotte's miscarriage." Ellis blinked, shaking his head. "What does this mean?" Rita hesitated. "There were whispers back then about another girl. Someone Charlotte may have been trying to help. Someone scared. Alone. She paid cash. Left no record. But she wrote something in the motel's guest book that night." She pulled a scan from the folder. Faded ink. Just one line. "For the baby that never got to be mine. And the one I couldn't let go." Ellis's hands trembled. Laney's room. Hope's birth. Charlotte's words. He didn't know what it all meant yet, but something had been set in motion long before Laney ever stepped into that motel. Something about mothers and the girls they couldn't save. And when Ellis returned to the hospital later that night, Laney was awake, sitting in the rocking chair, humming something soft to Hope. She looked up at him, eyes clearer than before. "I want her to know where she comes from," she said. "Do you?" he asked gently. Laney nodded. But then, as she reached for her backpack, something fell out. An old photo of her as a baby, and beside her, a woman that Ellis recognized instantly. It was Charlotte. Laney stared at the photo in her hand. The edges were worn, corners bent by time. She'd found it years ago at the bottom of her mother's closet. Never explained, never mentioned, just hidden. She was barely a year old in the picture, sitting in the lap of a woman with soft brown eyes, arms wrapped around her like a promise, a woman who looked nothing like her own mother. And yet, it was her, Charlotte. Laney didn't know the name back then, but now she saw it, clear as day. She held the photo up toward Ellis. "Is this her?" Ellis stepped forward slowly, took the picture. His hands trembled. "That's Charlotte. But how?" Laney's voice broke. "My mom always said we didn't have baby pictures, that nothing from those years was worth keeping. I found this one once, just this one, and when I asked, she slapped it out of my hands." Ellis stared at the woman in the photo, the softness of her eyes, the peace in her smile. "She held you like you were hers," he whispered. Laney sat down on the edge of the hospital bed. Her hands trembled now too. "Do you think, could she have been involved somehow? With my birth?" Ellis's mind raced. He remembered Charlotte's restlessness in those final months, her volunteering, her insistence on helping at-risk girls at the shelter downtown, the secrecy, the long nights away, the way she'd come home with tired eyes and silent pain. "I think," he said softly, "she may have tried to help your mother, and couldn't." Laney's lips parted. "She always said I ruined her life, that I should have never been born. But maybe," she looked down at the photo again, "maybe someone else thought I was worth saving." The room went still. Then Ellis reached into his coat pocket again and pulled out something small, something he hadn't shown anyone in years. A gold locket. Inside 2 tiny photos, one of Charlotte, the other, a space left empty. "She used to say," Ellis murmured, "that someday we'd find the right soul to carry in the other half." He reached over, opened the locket, placed the baby photo of Laney gently inside. Laney's eyes filled. "Why would she keep that photo?" Ellis looked at her. "Because maybe, in a moment when everything hurt, she saw you and believed in something again." Laney sobbed softly, hand on her heart. Hope stirred in her arms. The past wasn't gone. It had just been waiting for them to be ready. But as the emotion swelled between them, a nurse entered with a small envelope. "Laney," she said, "this came from the motel. Someone dropped it off this morning." Laney opened it slowly. Inside was a folded sheet of notebook paper, handwritten. It wasn't from Charlotte. It was from her mother. Just 3 words, scribbled like they'd been torn out of someone's soul. "Forgive me, please." Laney read the note over and over. The words weren't clean. They weren't gentle. But they were words she thought she'd never hear. Not in this lifetime. "Forgive me, please." Just 3 words, but they carried years. Ellis sat across from her, silent. He knew what it felt like to lose someone before you could say all the things you meant to hold love in one hand and silence in the other. "She left it at the motel?" Laney asked the nurse. The nurse nodded. "Said she didn't want to disturb, just wanted her to have it." Laney folded the note carefully. "I don't even know if I can forgive her," she whispered. "You don't have to do it all at once," Ellis said softly. "Sometimes forgiveness isn't a door you open. It's a window you crack just enough to let in some air." Laney smiled faintly. "That sounds like something she would have said." "Charlotte?" She nodded. "I don't remember her voice, but somehow I do." The room stayed quiet a while. Hope shifted in her arms, her tiny breaths grounding them both. Then Ellis reached for the hospital tray and picked up the birth certificate form. "You never filled it in," he said. "I couldn't." He handed her a pen. "Try again." Laney took it slowly, hands shaking. Mother's name, Laney Ruth McAllen. Baby's name, Hope Grace McAllen. She paused over the next line. Father's name. She looked at Ellis. His eyes met hers, calm, certain. And in that quiet space where 2 people choose trust over blood, she began to write. Ellis Grant. Her hand trembled, but the weight lifted. "She's not yours," Laney whispered. "Not really." He reached over, touched her hand. "She is now." Laney started to cry again, and he didn't look away. He let her cry the way she needed to, without fixing it, without fear, like someone who knew that healing came soft and slow. "She'll never know what it's like to be thrown away," Laney whispered. "Not like I did." "No," Ellis said. "She'll know what it's like to be chosen." Outside, the rain finally stopped. The sun came out in small, cautious beams, glinting off the window glass like a quiet hallelujah. And in that light, Ellis opened his wallet for the first time in days. Inside was a folded check, unsigned. He looked at Laney. "There's something I haven't told you." She tilted her head. "I'm not just some man in a motel," he said. He paused, took a breath. "I built Grant Technologies. I'm a billionaire, technically." Laney blinked, stunned. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I want to help," he said. "But not from a distance. I want to be here. I want to build something with you and Hope, whatever that looks like." She stared at him, speechless, "But only if you want me to," he added softly. And at that moment, a single beam of light hit Hope's face. She opened her eyes for the first time and smiled. The week that followed was a quiet waltz of silences and small gestures. Laney and Hope were discharged on a warm Thursday afternoon. The hospital smelled of disinfectant and slow goodbyes, and the sun outside had that golden glow of late summer. Ellis was already waiting in the car, engine running. But when Laney realized where he was taking them, that old fear crept back in. The roads smoothed out, the trees looked neater, the fences straighter, and then the house appeared. Not a house, a mansion, white, imposing, still like a photo in a frame that no one had touched in years. Tall windows, trimmed hedges, but no toys in the yard, no curtains swaying, no laughter. Laney clutched Hope tighter to her chest. "Are you sure we belong here?" Ellis pulled gently into the drive. "I'm not asking you to belong to this house," he said. "I'm asking if you'll let this house belong to you." She didn't answer. He opened her door, carried the diaper bag, the blanket, the bottles, every item like it was sacred. And maybe it was. Inside, the furniture was covered in white sheets, like ghosts, still waiting. Laney stepped carefully, as if the floor might break under her. Hope slept soundly, despite the unfamiliar air and the grandness pressing in. "When was the last time someone lived here?" she asked. "Not since Charlotte," Ellis said quietly. "I never came back after she passed." Laney looked around. There were photos, a young Charlotte smiling on a porch swing, a nursery with untouched bedding, a ceramic plate with 2 baby handprints, but no name. "There's too much space here," Laney murmured. "That's why you're here," Ellis replied. "To fill it." They spent the afternoon clearing one room, just one, the smallest. Ellis brought down a crib from the attic. Laney hand-washed the sheets, even though a state-of-the-art washer sat idle nearby. She needed the feel of the water, the effort, the rhythm of rebuilding. That night, they sat on the kitchen floor, eating canned soup, she with a spoon in one hand, Hope in the other. He with tea, still in his coat. "Why didn't you run?" she asked. Ellis took a long moment. "Because I spent years hiding in houses like this," he said. "And then you found me in a motel." She gave a small laugh. "That's not very romantic." "Maybe not," he said, smiling softly. "But it's real." The old clock struck midnight. Hope stirred upstairs. Laney stood barefoot on the marble tiles and padded down the hallway to comfort her. But when she picked Hope up from the crib, something tumbled from beneath the mattress. A small velvet box. Inside, a gold baby bracelet, etched in careful script. "To Hope, love, Charlotte." Laney didn't sleep that night. She sat on the nursery floor, rocking Hope in the dark, staring at the bracelet in her hand, like it held the key to every question she'd never dared to ask. "How did she know?" she whispered. "How did she know your name?" At first light, while Hope slept peacefully against her chest, Laney tiptoed into Charlotte's old bedroom. She didn't know what she was looking for, only that something was still unfinished. The room smelled like cedar and thyme. There were still books on the nightstand, a photo in a silver frame, a perfume bottle half full. She opened the closet slowly. At the back, beneath a folded quilt, she found a floorboard loose at the edges. She knelt down, pried it up with her nails, breath held like a secret. Beneath it, an envelope, yellowed with age, sealed, dated September 2009. On the back, in soft handwriting, "For the mother who will understand, someday." Laney sat on the floor, the envelope shaking in her hands, and then she opened it. "If you're reading this, it means you've already walked through fire, and I'm so sorry for that. I met your mother once. She was frightened, angry. She didn't want to keep you. But when I looked into her eyes, I saw myself, young, alone, pregnant. I couldn't change her, but I could try to protect you. So I left what I could. A name, a room, a thread. Hope. You were born in room 6 of the Rosebend Motel. I stayed there weeks before. It felt sacred somehow, like something waited. I don't know if we'll ever meet, but if we do, I want you to know, you are not a mistake. You are the prayer I whispered in a motel bed. Let this house hold you. Let Ellis stay. He has more love than silence. You are the second Cradle, and you are loved." Charlotte Laney pressed the letter to her chest and cried without shame. Downstairs, Ellis was outside in the garden, clearing weeds around a long-forgotten flower bed. When she found him, barefoot on the porch, she didn't say a word. She just handed him the letter. He read it in silence, then looked up at her. His voice broke. "She chose you. From the beginning." Laney nodded. "She chose us." Then Hope made a sound. A little coo, like agreement from a soul too new to know words. Laney passed her gently into Ellis's arms. "She's mine," Laney whispered. "But maybe she's yours too." He held the baby close, his eyes full. "She's ours." For a long moment they stood under the porch light, the three of them, not broken, just unfinished. But that same morning, as the mail truck creaked down the long gravel drive, a letter dropped into the box. Legal stationery, thick paper, notice of paternity filing. Nathaniel Carson. The letter sat on the kitchen counter like a storm waiting to break. Notice of paternity filing. Nathaniel Carson. The name hit Laney like a stone to the ribs. She hadn't heard it in over a year. The boy who said all the right things until the moment she needed him most. The one who vanished the second she said, "I think I'm late." Now he was back. Not with apologies, with a petition. Ellis watched her as she read the document in silence. Her face didn't crumble, not like it used to, but her shoulders stiffened, her jaw clenched. "He doesn't want her," she whispered. "He just wants control." Ellis nodded. "It happens more than people think." They sat in silence for a while. Hope played on a blanket nearby, cooing at the ceiling fan like it held the meaning of life. Laney finally looked at him. "What do we do?" "We fight," he said softly, but not with anger, with truth. That night, Laney wrote a letter to the court. Not a legal one, a human one. "To whom it may concern, I'm not asking for anything but this. Let her grow up knowing peace. Not paperwork, not courtrooms, not the tug-of-war of someone who left when she was just a heartbeat inside me. Her name is Hope. She was born early. She fought to breathe. She's mine. She's ours. And she has already lived more than most hearts can carry. Please don't take her story and turn it into a headline. Let it stay what it is. A second Cradle." The court date never came. Nathaniel withdrew the petition quietly, through his lawyer. No explanation, no call, just gone. Laney stood on the porch when the news came, sun on her face, arms around Hope. She didn't cry. She didn't collapse. She just exhaled. The kind of breath you only take when you realize you're finally safe. That night, she tucked Hope into her crib, the same one from the attic, now painted soft cream. She turned on the little lamp with the fabric shade. It glowed warm, like a porch light, waiting for someone to come home. Ellis came in quietly, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "She's out?" he asked, like a stone. They sat together on the floor, backs against the nursery wall. Neither of them said much. But when Hope let out a tiny sigh in her sleep, Ellis smiled. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't both been in that motel?" Laney looked at him. "No, because I was always going to end up in that room." He nodded. "So was I." The next morning, the mailbox was empty. The legal letters had stopped. The ghost of Nathaniel faded like fog in sunlight. Laney walked through the house with Hope on her hip, humming something soft. The mansion no longer felt like a place for someone else. It felt like home. There were signs of life now. A bottle on the counter, a baby sock under the couch, laughter in the hallway. And Ellis? He'd stopped sleeping in the guest room 2 weeks ago. They hadn't put labels on anything. There was no proposal, no grand declarations, just breakfast together, just hands brushing while folding laundry, just staying. And one afternoon, Laney opened the drawer beside her bed to find a small folded note in Ellis's handwriting. Some stories don't start with love. Some start with rain, with silence, with a motel room and a broken map. But what matters is that they keep going. "I love you." And she smiled. Not the smile of a rescued girl. The smile of a woman who'd learned to save herself and still let someone stay. Because some homes aren't built with bricks. They're built with holding a baby at 3 a.m., with hot tea on a tired morning, with forgiveness and time and choosing each other every day. And sometimes, that's all the cradle a soul needs. Epilogue. Miss Martha's Porch Light. If this story found its way to a quiet corner in your heart, if it reminded you that second chances often arrive without knocking, Then sit with me just a little longer, darling, because not every story ends with a wedding dress or a last kiss under the stars. Some stories end with a crib, a warm blanket folded at the end of the bed, a man who chose to stay, and a girl who became a mother before she stopped being a child, learning that love, real love, doesn't ask for perfection, only presence. If this story wrapped around your heart like a soft shawl on a cold morning, leave a little note in the comments, won't you? The porch light's always on here.